Well, friends, we are, you know, we shall be trying to look at the method with which history is being written. Every discipline has a method, so history also has a method. Otherwise, it will be very chaotic. It has certain methods which every historian or students of history is supposed to follow. And the question arises, what is history then? So my very brief definition of history would be that history is the narrative of the past. It's a very brief definition, but very comprehensive at the same time. So don't get misled by the brevity of the definition. Now the question arises: whose past we are concerned with? You know, and how to construct the past. And in history, like any discipline, you have to have certain amount of basics, and in history the basics are facts. Facts can be plenty of them, but are all facts historical facts? Should we consider all facts to be historical? Or do they have some, they are superfluous for historical narrative? In that process, we have to depend on certain methods in order to derive those facts from the large mass of facts which are strewn all over around us. So we will have to pick up certain facts. And then when you are, you have an objective that you want to write about certain people, say about a nation, history of India you want to write, then you will have an objective. So facts should be, in relation to the objective. So, and that will help a historian in reducing and focusing on the task. Until unless you focus, the subject which you are dealing with will be diverse and dispersed. Therefore, and the reader will lose interest if you are not writing a focused narrative. So, and this will be decided by what kind of perceptions you have about history and what kind of approach you should have about history. So, perceptions and approach are the two cardinal principles of determining the nature of facts you want to collect and collate. Therefore, the historians, right from the beginning, right from the time of Herodotus till to date, they have different perceptions of the past. They have thought about considering history as they saw, as they heard. Herodotus never visited India, but he writes about India. And certain of his facts are very true. Like, he says that in India, there are, giant ants, giant ants which devour gold. Now, this can't be true, in fact, what he is saying about this. But at the same time, he also says that in India, you can borrow money at the rate of 1% per month. This is very accurate. In 17th century, we also find that this was the percentage of rate of interest, on any borrowing. Short-term borrowing or long-term borrowing. Long-term borrowing will have larger interest rate, bigger interest rate than the short-term, because the one who is giving loan, he knows that very soon he will get back his principal along with the interest. But Herodotus, as early as 6th century BC, he is telling you that look here in India, this is the principle being followed. Therefore, our assessment of the past are based on the facts. So once you are basing your facts, your narrative is based on facts, I mean the facts which are there and which you have collected, then you will have an idea of writing history of the past. In other words, these are the facts help us in forming, in assessing the past and forming our own perception of the past. Let me give you an example. When we are saying our assessment and perception of the past, don't go very far till take a decade back or 2 decades back. If you take the newspaper reports, you will find that some some items of the news are getting front page attention. They are in bold letters. They are in the main in the front page. They are holding the main position. And then there are many other facts which are being reported in a daily newspaper who occupy some very brief mention, and that too at the second page, third page, fourth page, fifth or sixth page generally is occupied by sports. So if we take newspapers as an example and the facts are there, and how to collect those facts will depend on your interest. If you want to write on the polity of the policies of the state, you will select those facts. Where the prime minister or ministers, they are making statements, you will consider these are important for political history. At the same time, you will also look for, say, for sports, or what kind of social conditions were there. Our newspapers are very, very bad on this, because bad in the sense that they report all kinds of mischiefs happening in the society, rapes, murder, loot, plunder, all kinds of things are there. So if you collect, suppose you are trying to write history of crimes in India, then it will appear that India was having, two predilections. Indian people, it is the people who read newspapers. So you will know from those newspapers that what kind of subjects are being paid attention to by the particular newspaper. So it will appear as if India was full of only the statement of the ministers or prime minister, or it was full of crime. So if you collect so many facts about crime, so after 10 years you will find that India was not a place worth living. But that is not true. And so if you turn your attention to the pages covering sports, cricket will dominate. All kinds of cricket. So it will appear as if India was very passionate about cricket game. And other games will be sidelined. Therefore, as I was saying that, the question arises, who is selecting these facts for you? Like a historian, there is a team of reporters, then reporters, there is a hierarchy of team, reporters followed by sub-editors, then joint editors, then ultimately one editor. So at each stage, what they will consider irrelevant, they will delete that information. They will not allow that to come to the newspaper. Similarly, historians also collect facts, and then they make a hierarchy of facts. And when they are making hierarchy of facts, they are concerned about certain objectives. So that I say that how our assessments are best formed. They will be determined by our guiding principle of the past. If you make a survey from Herodotus up to Renaissance period, you will find that they were looking at history as reporting about certain curiosities of certain societies. Look here, in India there were animals which had horns and they were unicorn. Similar kind of strange things are also referred to. And by the time we graduate to Renaissance period, in between we have canonical literature. When church dominates, they have a different kind of narratives, and they are trying to justify their institutional existence. Similarly, by the time we reach Renaissance phase, the rationality, as a great influence on poets, literature, and historians, all kinds of people were concerned with logic, rationality, and a kind of, not exactly, scientific approach towards history. If this will be within quote, because they were not so familiar with scientific approach. But what happened was that now with Renaissance, they started looking at linguistic rigor, which Leopold von Ranke will again reiterate. They started looking at, the use of vocabularies. For example, the classic example is of Will of Constantine by Lorenzavalla. When the king asked him to examine the veracity of that document, he started reading it, and he found that there are many words, many terms which were not known at the time when this document was purported to have been written or claimed to have been written. So it survived for more than 900 years or so, and ultimately it is the time when Lorenzavalla is being asked to examine this. He finds that there are many infirmities in the document in terms of terminology, in terms of language, and then he says to the king that, look here, this is a forged document. So he is scrutinizing the facts, and on the basis of that he declares that this is a forged document. So when you are studying history, looking for facts, we should always think about the kind of vocabulary they were using. For example, I give you example from from Vishnugupta's Arthashastra. We all say that, look here, and we take pride in saying that and one should be very happy about it, that Arthashastra as a monumental text was written in the Mauryan period. But there are certain terms which were not of Sanskrit origin. That creates problems. So Trotman, he tried to select such vocabularies, and ultimately he said that there are certain parts in Arthashastra which are later compositions. Now, in order to convince us, we will have to look at this aspect. So Ranke's, Leopold von Ranke, the great German historian, 1795-1886, his period, he emphasized 2 points. That one should be concerned about individuality and development in history. By that he is saying that each historical phenomenon, epoch or event which you are dealing with had their own individuality. Ancient, Alexandrian phase has a different kind of vocabulary. They had a different kind of technology also. But after these people come, these Greeks come, they have left behind classical accounts. So we can compare our texts with their texts, and then we can arrive at certain things. I will elaborate upon that later on. So as I am saying that every fact has its own individuality, event has an individuality, and epoch and other things, they have individuality, and it is the task of the historians to establish the essence of that fact, essence of that event, essence of that epoch. How will you do that? That's an enormous exercise which you are supposed to do. Then how to do this? How to do this? So in order to achieve this kind of thing, you have to this is expected, according to Ranke, you have to immerse yourself in that epoch, when that thing has happened, and assess it in a manner appropriate for that time. And Ranke says that facts are infallible. Facts are very true. You can't modify them, you can't modulate them, so they are as it is. So his famous saying is that, he says, one can know how it was, or one should know, one can know how it was. How will you do that? The German term is Wer ist erkenntlich gewesen, which means it is the responsibility of the historian to simply show, demonstrate how it actually was. Don't, he is avoiding interpretation. You just say how it was. And this is, this was not a very profound aphorism, but it had an surprising success. Till to date, I will give you the example of G.R. Elton's book, Essence of History. You will find he is holding ground. His argument is holding ground. Then the question arises, as I said that his arguments are holding ground, wie es erkenntlich gewesen. So he is saying that, that this kind of methodology should be followed. And there are two historians, 20th century French historians, Charles Senobos and Charles Victor Langlois, who believed, and there is a course of more than 70, 80 years between these two people writing about. So they are saying that history was very scientific, history is empiricist, means based on facts, therefore it is very objective. There is no subjective element introduced into it. On subjectivity of facts, I will tell you later on in my next lecture. So according to them, facts are akin to atoms of information which were once collected and collated, and that would ultimately lead to, I have mentioned this, that this would certainly reveal the truth of the past. So remain confined to the facts as it was. That is the guiding principle of propounded by historians of those times. And E.H. Carr, in his book What is History, he says that a cult of facts was established by the 19th century. Everybody was saying that don't interpret, don't go into the sidelines of history, remain confined to the facts and reproduce the facts as they were. So, and this is this is called basing history on empirical facts. So this is also known as empiricist theory of knowledge. When we subscribe to this kind of approach, empiricist theory of knowledge, this would automatically presuppose that there should be a complete separation between the subject and the object. Subject is the historian. Subject is the history which he is trying to write, and object is to write correct history. So there is a difference. There is some ambiguity here. So these people are saying they are called empiricist school of historians. So they would always say that, look here, what the facts are saying, first ascertain the facts, and what the facts are saying, reproduce that, don't go beyond that. That is their guiding principle. So facts, they impinge on the observer from outside. Their facts are something external to the historian and are independent of the historian's consciousness. What do I mean by that? If I say that historian's consciousness should not interfere with this, it reminds me of Golzar's prescription to the future historians. He writes in his autobiography that when I do history, I shut my religion out. I don't let my religion interfere with my judgment of facts. So this kind of separation between historian and his ambience is expected from a good historian. So the simple business of the historian is to receive the facts and then act upon them. You write about that. The second point I have given, third point I have mentioned it, it is there. So, as I said, the job of the historian or the expectation from a historian is that he would collect ascertainable facts. I am qualifying it by saying that ascertainable facts. What do I mean by that? Ascertainable facts would mean that those those set of facts should be available to anyone who is reading your work and he wants to look at the facts afresh. So that would mean he can also ascertain the facts. The facts should remain. It is not that like our archaeology friends do, that they first report about an archaeological site, then they cover all the findings. So they are not available to us. We have to depend on what they have perceived as facts. In history, this is the major difference between an archaeologist and a historian. Our facts are available in the archives, in the inscriptions, in varieties of sources, which could be referred back by other subsequent historians or contemporary historians. So they can, in other words, this would be the veracity of facts. They should be available. They are available in documents, inscriptions, and host of other sources like E.H. Carr's words, and this is a famous quotation from E.H. Carr. He says that facts are like fishes on fishmonger's slab. You go to the market, you go to the fish seller, he has spread out his fishes before you, so you select some of them, you take them home, cook them, and relish them. Similarly, this is a very simple explanation, but this is a very relevant explanation. So, the historian's business from the empiricist school of point of view, which Leopold von Ranke is telling us, is this, that go and collect your facts, then process them and write about the event or whatever you are writing about. So, you do that. Now, the Ranke I shall be reiterating very often, because Ranke's thing is that Ranke has laid down certain rules. With Ranke we may agree, we may not agree, but we may agree or disagree, but we can't dispense with him or his prescriptions. According to him, read the sources with strict application of linguistic criticism. This is one very crucial aspect, and insisted on contemporaneity. What do I mean by that, or what did he mean by that? He is saying that we are reading documents, we are reading Ashokan inscriptions, so should we repeat whatever is written in Ashokan inscription and say that, look here, this is the history of Ashoka? No. He is saying that when you are reading these inscriptions or any document for that matter, go for what he calls, I will call it, linguistic rigor. As I said in the case of Lorenzo Valla, he tried to examine the text, and then he found that there are certain terminologies which were not, or which you should not expect in the document of those times, 4th, 5th century AD. They were not. Like the term tiara. Tiara was not there, and this is not a Greek term even. So, if a Greek monarch is writing, he is writing in Latin. He is referring to Greek terminologies. How can you have the vocabulary of other languages? I give you one example from our own country, and this is, don't take it otherwise, but this is very common. Suppose we read an ancient text and suddenly we come across one term and say that, look here, in the present 21st century it has a different meaning. But you will jump upon the conclusion, sir, look here, Anu is mentioned. Anu means atom. So, our ancient people knew about atom because in the Jaina philosophy, the term Anu comes, atom comes. But that was not atomic science. So, you will have to distinguish between the two. As I said in the beginning, that you will have to contextualize your facts. In that period, how do you find it? I do refer to one very famous or very popular myth, and if you go by our TV channels, which are actually making a mockery of facts, a historian cannot afford to do that. You sit down before any news channel, and if they are dealing with such religious theme of any religion for that matter, they will say that, look here, we have found the earliest example, and this is the runway where Ravan's Pushpak Viman had landed. Now that runway is very modern. At that time, we did not know how to use coal tar for making the roads or the concretes, stones of a particular kind. They were not known at that time. We don't find any reference to them in the contemporary literature. So, how to jump upon this conclusion? They jump upon this conclusion just on the basis of a occurrence of a term Viman. Now, in modern times, Viman means aeroplanes. But if you look into Sanskrit dictionaries, for example, if you read Amar Kosh, subsequently you go on to consult any dictionary up to Abhidhan Chintamani, Abhidhan Ratnamala and others of early 12th century, 11th, 12th century, you will find that Viman doesn't mean what we are trying to imagine. The term Viman simply means a tool, a loom. Now, what a weaver's loom has to do with this kind of thing which we are attributing to that time. So, this is what he means by linguistic rigor. I can multiply this explanation. There can be many varieties of words which are there. So, we will have to be very particular about the use of a particular vocabulary in a particular time. This is called, this we also define as historical linguistics. So, we will have to go into the history of the language. This is what he means, and this we can't dispense with. Whether we are empiricist historians or not, but we can't dispense with this, very essential feature of history writing. Second thing he is telling us is the contemporaneity. Contemporaneity of what? Contemporaneity of the sources. Then he further defines it, that it should be contemporary in terms of time and space. Suppose an event is happening in, today we are at Aligarh, something has happened at Aligarh. So, any gentleman who is eyewitness to that will be more reliable. Then, what the subsequent other writers have written on the basis of his narratives or somebody else's narratives. So, their concern will be different, their concerns will be different. So, the narration will be different, and suppose someone is 1000 kilometers away from Aligarh, his perception will be different. So, this is how he says that it should be contemporary in terms of time and space. It should be, if Battle of Panipat is taking place in 1526 at so at Panipat, so you have to be the writer, if he is there at Panipat and he is witnessing the battle between the two giants and he writes about them, then we will consider his writings to be the contemporary to the event. So, Ranke emphasized that if the source is contemporary to the event, to the period you are consulting, then it is more reliable than subsequent writings, which are again based on certain hearings. So, this is called empiricism. So, his followers up till now, up to Elton, we will say, they followed his empirical method, and Ranke also prescribed that you should not go into creating any kind of hypothesis. Don't lay any hypothesis. And by that he also means that don't try to have an hypothesis before you have collected the facts. Because then you are putting the cart, you are putting the cart before the horse, not behind him. So your exercise will be quite misleading. So, according to him, if you want to reveal the truth of the past, your facts should be selected from contemporary accounts. Then contemporary in terms of time and space. Then subsequent generation of historians till up to our times, they have always been in dialogue with this foundational position. I am calling it deliberately a foundational position because on this is laid the foundation, on this the premise of empiricist school, is standing. So, this is the foundational position of the empiricist school, that don't waver beyond what the facts are. So, the question arises then that can we apply Ranke's method as it is prescribed to us? We find that there are certain problems in accepting Ranke's method in totality. You can't have that. Otherwise, there will be problem. For example, whatever may be the source, say for example Ashokan inscription or any inscription of that time, the inscriptions are not a book. They are not reporting about everything which is happening in the society. Their subject matter is limited. It is confined. So, if we are writing about Mauryan period just on the basis of Ashokan inscriptions, there is every likelihood of having very vast amount of gaps of knowledge. They are not revealing everything, they are not touching everything. So, those things will never be dealt with. As I said in the case of newspapers, especially the newspapers of present times, there is hardly any news about the problems being faced by the different sections of the society. That doesn't mean that those sections of the society don't exist. That doesn't mean that they are not facing those problems because they are not referred to in the newspapers. There are hardly any news about the wages of labor, the conditions of labor. It doesn't mean that labor has disappeared from India. They don't say anything much about many other things which are not referred to, because they are selecting certain facts. They have a limited perspective. They are selecting for the immediate readers. Newspapers have a very poor shelf life. We read newspapers and they are published very rapidly to be read very rapidly. So, when you are reading something very rapidly, you are missing many things. So, these editors also, they have also certain limitations. So, our sources also have certain limitations. First of all is the filling in the blanks. How will you do that? Then there is the problem of selection. There can be, for modern period, we have so many facts around us. Should we consider every fact of modern times to be important for history writing? No, we will have to take representative cases. Rest are not, very crucial. So, you will select only those facts which has an impact on your writing, on your objective. Second problem is that if you follow their prescription blindly, then this would lead to, as I said, utter aridities. Arid zone doesn't have any vegetation. They don't have flowers, they don't have anything. So you have only sands, vast stretch of sands before you. Your history will be as uninteresting as it is. So you will lack interest in, your reader will also lack interest in reading such a text which is full of such things. And so there will be essentially, you will miss the excitement of a historian. Your reader will also find it very boring. Third problem with Ranke's thing is that when you are going into the details, he is saying that he is prescribing that we should write only we should collect all the facts and then write history. So you may be writing about the minutest details of the event or epoch. So I am saying that this will create meaningless minute. You will fill up your historical narrative with trivial, very trivial details of something. No student of history will be interested in them. For example, if you write history and put a lot of literature in that, if I say that when Babur arrived in India, the flowers were blooming and there were so many rivers flowing, nobody will be interested in that. They are just concerned what is happening. And what happening has an impact on the future developments in Indian history. Rivers are flowing, well, that is fine, that is also part of history. So it will be filled with trivial details. Therefore, when we are trying to apply Rankian method, historical method, our own understanding of that society, of how societies operate, were motivated by, and what they were capable of doing. By this I mean that in order to interpret a society, a polity or a political development, you cannot afford to remain confined to the facts. You are not producing the mirror image of facts, that look here, I found this written about this. You will have to think beyond that.